Hello there, and welcome to Crossy's Corner. Wherever you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, good morning. It's a pleasure to have you with us. And as you can see, we've got a fantastic guest for you tonight, Aifric Keogh.
Hi, Martin. How are you?
I'm very well. And really, you are an amazing woman in terms of your accomplishments because we're going to talk about the rowing and, the first woman from Ireland with Emily Hegarty, I think, to be in a World Championship final. The first woman with Emily, Fiona, and Ema to be an Olympic medal winner for Ireland. A scientist, a microbiologist, and a food scientist, and shortly to be an MBA.
Yeah, that's it, kind of, I suppose, in a nutshell.
I mean, how does all that get packed into one life?
Yeah, well, I suppose most of that has kind of been in the last 5 or 6 years, and it's been pretty chaotic, to be honest. There hasn't really been much downtime between it all, so it's been good though. Like I always like to have something else going on outside of training. So I really enjoy kind of studying, and there was maybe a year or two there while I was working as well. So I definitely I like to be busy, and I like to have something else going on outside of training. So I suppose that's how I've kind of ended up with all those additional letters at the end of my name.
Yeah, it's interesting actually because I think it was the Australians. There was a crew. I don't know if you won't remember them, but you might have heard of the Awesome Foursome and James Tompkins and Drew Ginn and those kind of guys. And they always said, for them, they had to have something outside of their training, and they seemed to make it work. Certainly through winning Olympic titles and so on. And I guess that sounds that it's really important for you.
Yeah, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, like rowing definitely is a priority, along that journey, and it takes a lot to juggle it all. And there was a year, the Olympic year, I was just training. I didn't have anything else really going on outside of that, just for obvious reasons. I suppose also kind of with COVID, trying to stay safe, stay within the bubble. So I have had times as well where I have just prioritized rowing, but a lot of the other time I do like to have kind of either some work or some study outside of it, and I think it's kind of healthier for your mind just to have something else to focus on apart from all the training and trials or whatever it is at the time.
Okay, so it's good to have two things. Tell me after it what you like about rowing. What draws you to it, or what keeps drawing you back? Because you're kind of you've been in it in the world since I think your first was back in 2014. So you do keep coming back for more. So tell us what draws you to the sport.
I mean, I think I really just love the routine of it all, and I love the training element of it. And I think I'm obviously a very competitive person, but I think a lot of that lies within just being competitive with myself almost. It's not a case of trying to be the top outsider or the best person in the squad. It's generally just trying to kind of be better than I was the day before or the week before. And I think that kind of self drive that I have just to constantly improve is kind of what's kept me in it so long. So yeah, I think it's just kind of that competitiveness with myself almost, and I think that's also what helps me outside of training as well. With all my other studies and work, it's kind of just always trying to, I suppose, kind of keep momentum, keep improving and learning.
Where did that drive come from? And I know you're in your parents' house. So is it both your parents? Is it your mum or your dad, or is it from somewhere else?
I'm not too sure, to be honest, and I don't really, you know, obviously I started rowing when I was maybe 11 or 12, but before that I wasn't really too competitive. Like, obviously maybe I might get like upset over like a board game at home or whatever, like with my siblings, but I didn't really start getting too serious about it until I started rowing. And I used to do basketball and hockey as well outside of that, but I just loved the fact with rowing there was training every day. Like there was an opportunity every day to kind of to go training, hang out with my friends, and I think that's how I ended up sticking with that sport as opposed to the other ones.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just kind of really enjoy that there was so many sessions and just so many opportunities to kind of to get out there and get training and get work done.
So tell us what type of rower you might be. So, if somebody asked me that question, I'd say I'm not very technical, I'm not very fluid, or I wasn't, but I tried hard and worked hard. Is there a sort of easy description you can give of yourself as a rower?
Yeah, I would say that's exactly it there, what you said. Yeah, definitely not the most technical. And I think, I would be one to struggle if we had some time out of the boat, whether it was through, bad weather, we might be on the ergs for a week, that it would take me a day or two when we eventually got back into the boat, I suppose, to almost pick up where I left off. And yeah, I think, I'm kind of one of those people that doesn't mind slogging away on the erg and will kind of from the first stroke to the last stroke in the session kind of gives it everything, and that's not very pretty most of the time. So I think that's definitely what you said about yourself is almost exactly to a T what I am.
That's really interesting. And how is that replicated or not in your four, with Fiona and Emily, and Ema?
Yeah, I think like we're all quite similar in that. Like the rest of the girls are probably a bit more technical than me. And I think we'd be in maybe a video meeting, and Antonio and Giuseppe are kind of like, so when are you gonna fix your separation? When are you actually gonna try fix this? And I'm like, I literally think of it every single stroke. It's just you think you're kind of rowing a certain way, and then you see it later on and you're like, oh god, I thought I fixed it. But yeah, so I think the girls probably can change a lot quicker than me. They probably have a better kind of response time. I think we all have our days where we absolutely like smash it on the ergs. I think Fiona's crazy. She can pull outrageous splits. But Emily and Emer definitely can give her a run for her money as well any day of the week.
Oh wow. So that's what they do in the boat. What about their personalities? We're obviously going to get to know you more during this chat, Aifric. But how would you describe the personalities of your crewmates? What are they like to be with, and what sort of people are they? Maybe you can go down the boat.
Yeah, I think Emily's hilarious, whether she means to be or not. We always get a laugh with her around. I think she's kind of the youngest out of us all, and she's very much always kind of seeks our approval. Like, is it okay if I do this? Is it okay if I do that? And we're like, you're your own woman. Do what you want. She's very much a people pleaser and tries to kind of keep the peace. And we're like, do what you want. Stop looking for our approval, whatever that might be. But yeah, no, she's obviously. I was very close with her. We lived together, kind of the Olympic year, kind of, and maybe just at the end of 2020 as well. So we lived together for maybe over a year and spent many training camps in the same room together as well. So we were quite close, and we obviously had raced the pair previously as well. Yeah, Fiona's quite quiet, I think, initially, and then when you get to know her, she really opens up, and she's a bit of a mad one. On a night out, you definitely want to be with Fiona. She's definitely she's great fun out and about. Emer means business. She's very strict with us when we're in the boat. She's our strategy woman, and she's highly intelligent, and yeah, she's a great laugh as well. I would have spent a lot of time with her in the season just gone, because we were both up in Dublin training together. So yeah, and I think the key to us all is that we all just get on so well, and over the last year or two, whatever it's been at this stage now, there's never been a moment of tension or anything like that. That we're all great friends.
I could get that impression because at the recent World Championships, we were in the commentators were in the same hotel as you guys, and so we could see you at breakfast, generally the four of you together, and could see the great atmosphere between you that you had. And you also had this kind of boombox speaker thing.
Yeah, sorry about that. We're probably keeping people awake at night or up early if that was the case. But yeah, I think no, obviously it goes beyond just the four of us as well. Like I think our team in general are very close knit, and we do have that big boombox speaker, and that I don't know if you heard it from the commentators box, but we had it. I'm sure any other athletes from other federations, whenever they passed us, they probably just roll their eyes because, especially actually potentially the Australians, because we were right across from them this year at the athletes kind of rest area. Yeah, so amongst ourselves and the boys, we have a playlist going of all our kind of hype songs before races and training as well. So yeah,
Wow.
we like to just kind of keep it, I wouldn't say party atmosphere, but just kind of keep it nice and relaxed before racing, and just to kind of enjoy those kind of 40 minutes maybe where you're getting ready, you're getting all your last bits ready to go before you head onto the boat, just to kind of keep it as relaxed as possible. And the boombox is the way we do it.
Give us an idea of what your top 3 songs are then.
Oh God. Well, we have a lot of Jay-Z, Kanye West. We have something from the Scissor Sisters. So yeah, we Beyonce. We've a good mix. So we obviously
love Beyonce.
Yeah, we also have a healthy collaboration with the boys. If you go on the playlist, you might see people removing other people's songs just because they don't like it. But you kind of have to allow everyone's taste to kind of make an appearance somewhere.
Yeah. Now, 2022 wasn't, I guess, the kind of championships that you want. You made the A final, which was great. You came second in that semi.
Yeah.
What was going on there, or with a bit of distance between now and the race, what chance have you had to reflect?
Yeah, I think it was a weird one. Like obviously, we won our heat, we came second in our semi-final, and we kind of thought, like, all going well, we'd be on that podium. And people kind of asked afterwards, oh, what happened? Was someone sick? Was someone injured? Was there anything kind of going on? Because obviously throughout the championships there was a few cases of COVID of athletes having like that, but like unfortunately there was nothing. There was no stand there, which is probably worse in a way, because we couldn't pin it on a particular reason. And unfortunately that's just sport. Sometimes like you have those bad days, and obviously we were quite upset with the performance, but at the same time we hadn't done a lot of preparation together. It definitely wasn't my best training year, having been away from the center for the majority of the year. And you kind of just have to take it on the chin and move on, and and just look forward and see what you can do to kind of not be in that position again, I suppose.
Did you have, I mean, was there any sense with your prognostics going into the regatta that you were on for a medal, or were they looking good for you, or was it a bit erratic? Sometimes you'd be quick and then other times you wouldn't be.
I think coming up to Tokyo, we were very, very consistent. Like we were always up at the top, depending on if we were racing Paul or Finton or not, if they were around that day. But if the boys weren't around, yeah, we were generally up at the top of the prognostics. But coming into the World Championships this year, we to be honest, we didn't actually have that much time together as a crew. I think it was maybe 10 days.
Wow, you're joking.
Yeah, so I mean that's obviously not going to help things, but I mean then also we had this hot new double on our heels of Sunita and Zoe, so
yeah,
they were very consistent. They were kind of the crew of our team heavyweights. So yeah, we were judging off them, and to be honest, that we did have a good few days where we kind of were right on their heels and we were performing quite well. But like you said, yeah, there was the odd day where we were kind of off the pace, and you kind of have to. The aim is to be as consistent as possible, and we were always told that the crews that can produce results consistently, they're the ones that will kind of perform when it comes to championships.
Yeah, did it feel like the boat wasn't moving as well for you during the row, or was it something that you kind of figured out afterwards?
Again, like there was nothing, I didn't come out of the boat and say, "Oh God, we were really short," or there was not one thing that really stood out to us. I think, like simply, we just weren't as slick as we were, and we hadn't as much time together as we had previously. And you do wonder, okay, well, if we could do it in the semi and if we performed in the heat, why couldn't we do it again in the final? And to be honest, like I don't really know. It's unanswered at the moment, and I haven't actually seen the girls since really to kind of talk to them about it. But like our debrief on the day was there was no disaster. Like no one came off a seat, nothing like that. It just
Yeah.
we didn't have the speed that day.
How do you view the standard of that event? Because obviously it was the first time in the Tokyo Olympics, and the Australians and the crew from the Netherlands were very close. And it was a strong, very strong event. How do you view the event in terms of, has it moved on? Was the standard the same? Was it a little lower? Particularly with crews coming in like the British for example, the Australian. I know they had two new personnel on board, but finishing in third place. How do you read the event?
I think it's getting faster, and I think it's almost there's a lot of movement. I think every year with people moving from maybe the pair into the four. Like Romania had a lot of changes throughout the season, and you do come across countries that have the same four in the boat all year, start to finish, and then there is a lot of movement. Maybe like ourselves, obviously we had different fours racing at different times, and I think, especially with a lot of countries doubling up now, like there's people going into the eights, and I think it is just getting stronger and stronger, and it's a good thing, I suppose, to be part of that. But yeah, it just makes those races kind of a lot tougher, and everything gets the margins get a lot closer.
One of the things that I was really surprised at was the emergence of the British four, and it was kind of quite striking because you'd beaten them back in the Olympics in 2014, and that was a good crew with silver medalists from the Rio 8 on board. But it seemed a very dominant performance by the British, in fact a dominant season by the British. How did you read that, and what sense do you make of it?
I think I actually thought they were just rowing very well. Like when you look at them, they look very similar in their stroke, and yeah, I think they're very efficient in what they're doing, and they just actually are rowing very well. I kind of think when you look across boats, you could have unreal 2Ks in one boat, but if you're not actually like applying your physiology correctly with the technique, it's not really any good to you. So I think that crew, to me, it struck me as that they did a lot of miles together, and they spent a lot of time working on doing the same stroke. And you can even see in the way, if you watch them racing, like it doesn't really change. They're just very consistent across their race profile, and yeah, like they were a very, very good crew this year.
Yeah, but you had some good results this year. I know you mix things up in terms of the four and the pair. You had different combinations. I kind of, from the outside, I sort of viewed that as the strength of Irish women's rowing, that you could mix and match like that. How did the season unfold for you in terms of trying out different combinations?
Yeah, so yeah, like you said, it is kind of, I suppose, starting to show the strength and depth that we're starting to build. And we obviously had six sweep athletes this year, and the decision was made after the first trial that Fiona and Emily would go into the pair. They were the top pair at the trial, and the four of us, Emer, Natalie, Tara, and I, then went into the four. And this was maybe about a week before Poznan World Cup.
Poznan, yeah.
Yeah. So Emer and I were quite busy, tied up in Dublin up until that point. So, it was a bit of a mad dash then before the World Cup to try and get kind of some sessions done in that four before we went out racing. And, as much as we were coming off the back of a medal in the Olympics, kind of felt no pressure, just because the boat was only put together a couple of days and it was a new combination. And kind of racing against a lot of unknown crews too. So it was actually, great surprise to come away with a medal. And I think, again, looking back on it, it wasn't the prettiest rowing, but it was just a case of, let's just empty it and see, really see how far we can push it in the middle of the race. And we were coming, I think, 4th and 5th for a lot of the race, and it was only kind of in the closing 750 that we pushed on and managed to come through in 3rd place. So that was great, a great result for us. And the medal and double also, the double and pair, also medaled as well.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Like that, I think that event was kind of the first time that Ireland, every crew had medalled, all the girls, and Finton had medalled. So that was a great success for us that weekend. So we went back to Ireland, and I actually had to go to South Africa for 2 weeks.
Oh, I remember. Yeah. Why was that?
That was just after Poznan. So a part of my MBA program, I had a module in South Africa. So
wow.
I had to leave the team there for a while. So I went off, and just with the timing of like how many weeks there was until Munich, and kind of due to, I suppose, the performances, like everyone had done quite well, the decision was made just to kind of leave the cruise as is and to kind of move forward. So one of the under-23 boys, Jack Dorney, filled in for me while I was off studying. So yeah, they adopted Jack for the 2 weeks, and he sat in for me. And the girls kind of just plowed on without me. So yeah, I came back and had to sit in for Jack then, and prepared for Munich kind of in the same cruise. So yeah, and then from Munich we moved on to Italy for our final training camp. Didn't go home at all, so that was like a really long stint for us.
Yeah.
Kind of played around for a while, did a couple of trials, a few kind of speed tests, and we just kind of reordered the cruise a bit. And yeah, then that was how we finished off the season.
I was going to ask you, in terms of how well do you get on with your coaching staff, with the performance director and Giuseppe, who I think is your coach?
Yeah, no, very well. And, I'm really appreciative that they kind of gave me the space this year to kind of step back and to not be at the center every day, and I suppose to kind of trust me to do my training. I joined the ladies boat club in Trinity, and kind of slogged there every evening with them on the rowing machines. And,
oh, really?
And Emer came in as well. So yeah, and we kind of just did some rowing at the weekend. And there were some difficult times, obviously, where they were looking for us to come down to kind of get some training done, and we just couldn't, whether it was study commitments or work commitments. But it worked out in the end, and I think like we really appreciated them just kind of giving us the freedom to do that, and to kind of just take a year to, I suppose, kind of breathe a bit as well, not to kind of be in that high performance environment every single day, and to kind of maybe enjoy a few other things for once.
So what are they like to work with, your coaches? Because obviously one of the big things has been about the way Irish rowing has just moved through in the last few years. Mm-hmm. But how much of that is due to them and the way that they work?
Yeah, well, I think in terms of the heavyweight program, I think a lot of it, if not all of it, I suppose, is due to them. Dominic has been involved with the lightweights for a long time, and they were first with the success, I suppose, at Rio, with Gary and Paul. But I think definitely since then, since 2017, when Antonio came in, and then initially it was David McGowan as well before Giuseppe. Yeah, I think it was kind of his program, and just a huge shift, I suppose, in kind of the volume of training, and I suppose the work ethic that really kind of pushed us all on. And I think as well, before that, I think our training center was kind of a bit of a closed door system. There wasn't that many people. There wasn't that many people there, and whereas Giuseppe and Antonio and David, they were just kind of looking to build a team, get as many people down, and start putting pressure on the likes of, I suppose, me and whoever else was there before that. I kind of was happy out to keep the team small, because the smaller the team was, kind of the more guaranteed I was to have a seat. But you know, I quickly realized that's not going to get you very far. And yeah, I think, you know, that's been the biggest turnaround, just increasing the size of the team. And over the last couple of years, you know, our success has just kind of dripped down into under 23s, into the juniors. And yeah, it's been great. And, you know, it really is kind of thanks to all their hard work. And then obviously, you know, we do have obviously a lot of talent to go with that too. But I think without that kind of structure, and I suppose their program as well, obviously, and their ways of doing things, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. How in terms of the training, I mean, what's the session that you like doing the most, and what's the session that you kind of think, oh my god, not this session coming up now?
Oh, well, I think the funny thing with their program is like each session, I suppose, is doable when you look at it by itself, but it's just when you put it all together in a week, day after day, session, it's all of them. Like you kind of look at Tuesday and you might be like, oh God, I can't do that. And then you're like, oh, well, tomorrow or the day after is worse again. So I think, you know, we do a lot of really long paddles, like it can be anywhere from like 24 to 30K.
Oh, really?
And that's fine by itself, but you know, when you do it once and then you do it the following morning, or you know, maybe it's probably actually even worse in the evening sessions because you've already done your morning session at that stage and you're kind of just looking to go home to bed. But yeah, you know, there was probably in 2019 maybe we'd have maybe 6 pairs out in the water, and obviously, you know, we don't train fully on a 2K course. It's a lot of corners, and there's a lot of cutting off, there's a lot of wash, there's a lot of shout each other, and yeah, it can get intense. So yeah, that's probably when you're very tired, that's probably my least favorite session. Just kind of not even the rowing and thinking about your technical. It's just the negotiating your way around the bend when you have another pair right in your shoulder and another one coming up on top of you as well. So yeah, and then my favorite session, oh God, I don't know. It's hard to pick really, but I obviously I really enjoy the race sessions at the end of the week when, you know, we're doing, if it's a 1K 1500s and you're just lining up against the whole squad. I think that's great fun. I mean, obviously it's only great fun when you're going fast. If you're not going fast, it's not really enjoyable.
Yeah.
But I mean, most of the time, yeah, you enjoy it.
Have you ever beaten Paul and Finton on the prognostics?
Oh yeah, we have definitely a few times, and I think our biggest claim to fame, we did our prep pieces before Tokyo, and you know, like on the course, like maybe whatever it was, 2 or 3 days before racing, and we beat them by like 0.01%. And yeah, I like to remind Finton of that every now and again. But I mean, obviously, we probably peaked too soon, seeing as they won a gold medal and we only got bronze. But still.
Yeah. So that's really interesting that you had that kind of intensity of training. I was just imagining you. Are you steering the pair when you do those competitive sessions?
Yeah, most of the time, whatever boat I'm in, I'm usually steering. Yeah, so.
How is that for you?
Yeah, like, to be honest, at this stage, I just try to stay away from the chaos, and like obviously people are looking to get out in front and cut corners and go the shortest line, let's say. I usually kind of make a point and, like, you know, stay as far away from that as possible. But sometimes you get caught up in it a bit. But yeah, I mean, I usually I have no problem shouting at someone if they're in my way, or if they're coming straight for me and I'm kind of saying, well, I can't move out of the way, so you either stop or go around me. But yeah, I think we've gotten a bit better behaved in the last year or two, because it was just kind of getting out of hand. I mean, we have like a 13-kilometer lake with plenty of room for everyone. Yet and all, we all like to go on the exact same line. So yeah.
So is the blade clashing?
Oh yeah, yeah. And I think, to be honest, Giuseppe was pulling his hair out at one stage, because he was just like, mind the equipment, please. Like, or like sometimes if the water level is quite low, there might be, like, you know, a tree sticking up or whatever it is, and he's just like, please stay out wide, like don't go into the bank. But yeah, that's kind of the excitement sometimes we get on a Monday morning.
And how often do you mix that kind of competitive training on the water with stuff in the gym or the ergs?
Yeah, so like mostly we'd obviously go in the water every morning, and then maybe 3 times a week we'd kind of come in and do weights off the back of that as well. And then the ergo sessions we usually would generally would have maybe two like prescribed sessions on the ergo week, but obviously that can end up being a lot more if the weather isn't great. But to be honest, in the last year or two, if the weather isn't great, we would more so go on the row perfect, just because we kind of find that probably a bit more similar to rowing in the boat. And like I said, if I miss a day or two out of the boat, I kind of end up paying for it for another session or two.
Yeah.
So yeah, we use both. Like all our testing would be on the rowing machine, but a lot of our kind of steadier stuff on land would now be on row perfect. Yeah.
So do you get the perfect curve on the row perfect now then?
Yeah, so yeah, you get your curve, and we obviously have been shown, well, this is what your curve should look like. We have all these sorts of mountains and peaks and everything coming out. Everyone's just like, yeah, sick of trying to change it.
Are you a 2K or is it a 6K that you do the longer test?
Well, yeah, we do both, but like I definitely much prefer a 6K. I'm very much a kind of long distance person, rather than a short and sharp.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, definitely, yeah.
Oh, wow. What's your 2K PB then?
My 2K is 6:39.
Oh, wow. That's better than Ema's.
Yeah, I think Emer was 6:41 or something. But to be fair to Emer now, she did that kind of 3 weeks after coming back from COVID. So I'm sure she'll get there someday.
Yeah. One of the things, listening to you chatting with various people earlier, and which is why I asked you about your relationship with the coaches, because you, I think, was it in 2020 or maybe 2020, you went to your coaches and said, look, I think you ought to prioritize the four. And it sounded like they listened to you. Tell us how that came about, and was that you guys talking about it amongst yourselves and then taking that to the coaches? What was the idea behind that?
Yeah, so I think that kind of all stemmed from 2019. We qualified the pair and we didn't qualify the four, so we only had 2 seats, let's say, booked for the Olympics, and a four of some sort would have to go to the last chance regatta to qualify the four. And the initial idea was that as it was qualified, and I suppose it was a safer bet, that the pair would be prioritized, and then the four would be, 3 to 6, then whoever was left. So we went about anyway doing our trials for the whole year, trying to find the fastest pair. And I mean, to be honest, it's still kind of similar to what we do anyway, regardless of what we prioritize. I think the coaches always want to know who are the top two.
Yeah.
So we were doing our trials for the top pair, and I can't even remember how many races it was, but no matter what we did, I think there was only maybe 0.3 or 0.2 between everyone. And it was just a case of like, right, like someone, eventually we're going to have to keep racing, and eventually someone's going to lose, and it's going to be just a case of, right, something went wrong, or it's the 6th or 7th race, let's say. So we just kind of felt like, why not put like the 4 people who are so close into a 4, and that surely we would have a better chance of qualifying with our top 4. And then that would ultimately mean that we would have 6 people definitely going, rather than maybe taking a chance and sending, putting the top 2 in the pair and sending the other. So, and I think it just kind of, from, I suppose, a constant training in pairs and like the battle paddling in pairs, I think we all kind of just got a bit fed up of rowing in pairs. Whereas the 4 was like, whenever we went training the 4, it was just a lot more fun. It was a lot more enjoyment. There wasn't that kind of hugely competitive element to it. It was just about trying to get the boat moving as well as possible. So I think we kind of just sat down and said, look, we want to prioritize the 4. We think that, we might have a better chance in the 4 if you do it like this. And, it was a big risk. And we weren't quite sure how they would take it. And it was kind of around the time that the COVID was coming in and the Olympics were being called off anyway. So I don't think there was an actual moment where they said, yes, okay, that's fine, and they confirmed it. I think it was a case of, okay, we'll start training in it. And when everything got called off anyway, we all went our separate ways. But it was then when we went to race that Europeans, that was in October in Poznan, that they decided to prioritize the 4 and to see how we got on. And because we medaled, then they said, okay, this seems to be working. And in training as well, I think, prognostically, the 4 was performing better than the top pair. So that's kind of how that came about.
That's really interesting. And that was all focused towards the Last Chance Saloon, the so-called Regatta of Death. Have you ever been in any competition like that before or since?
No, haven't. Like, that was, I mean, as much as like it was very high pressure and it was very much win or lose, I actually, like, obviously it was a positive outcome for me, but I did actually enjoy it. I really think we went in there very confident, and probably, you could argue maybe like dangerously too confident, but I think we had a great Europeans in Varese, kind of 4 weeks before that, I think it was. And I think for me anyway, I was just very much of peace that, like, look, if I don't qualify now, like, I'm never going to qualify. I can't do anything more. I've given up. I'd given up my job at that stage, kind of 12 months previously, and we'd all improved so much. And I was like, if we don't do it now, we're never going to do it. So I think it was just a case of, right, let's just go out and see what we can do. And obviously it worked out well for us. And I think what really made the weekend was when our lightweight women qualified as well. Like, that was so special. Like, we were on the bank when their race was coming down, and their schedule had been really brutal actually, because it all been condensed and they had such a large entry. Like, they were racing kind of 3 times in the space of, like, I think 20 hours or 24 hours or something like that. So, like, that was really amazing just to kind of, obviously when we increased the team by 4, it was great. But when they qualified too, that was just really the cherry on top for us as a team.
I suppose you couldn't celebrate because of COVID, or did you go out to Pickwick's or anything like that?
No, definitely not. We went back obviously to the hotel, and we kind of had a debrief, the whole team, of, obviously a great week for everyone. And, but, the Olympics is in 64 days, obviously, you can't, there's no point risking it all now. And I think we all just got like a takeaway pizza, went up to our room.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it was, look, we had a good night. We spent it together. Like, we obviously chilled out together for the evening, and we got up very early the next morning to get a flight home, because we didn't stay on to race for Lucerne. So, obviously it might not be what you picture when you think I've qualified for the Olympics, but at the same time, we were all very focused on what we have to do in, just kind of 60 days time. So yeah.
Aifric, I want to talk about the Olympics at some point, but the thing that's pressing on my mind at the moment is your health issues around 2019, which to listen to are very striking, and partly because I've had DVT and gone to pulmonary embolism as well back in 2016, so maybe it was because of that. But can you describe just what was going on for you, and and what happened?
Yeah, I think, like, I come off the back of the really successful 2018 World Championships, where I think I made the A final with Emily, like you mentioned, and it was really like a moment of validation of, okay, I'm actually good enough to do this. Because I think, not like I was never truly in the running for Rio, but I was down there training, and a coaches had told me, like, look, kind of essentially, don't think you're good enough to do this. And I was kind of at a crossroads of, like, do I just kind of give up, or so that kind of 2018 World Championships was, like, for me personally, was like it was obviously a great achievement, but it was just really kind of motivating to kind of push on. So that winter, like I absolutely smashed it training wise. I was pushing myself harder than ever before, and kind of like what you said, like of not really focusing on my technique, just trying to get fit and strong as possible. And yeah, I was in my head, I was flying. You know, I'd made the top pair. We were doing quite well in trials. We were entered to race the Europeans in Lucerne. I think around May time, maybe April, May time, and was on a training camp kind of a few weeks before that. And coming home from training camp, I was like, God, I'm wrecked. Like I really feel like I obviously trained hard, but I feel like I'm not really recovering from this block at all. Kind of making like jokes, like walking to the shop with my boyfriend out of breath, and I was like, God, high performance athlete over here can't even walk to the shop. And like, yeah, you know, it was just kind of a bit I just felt kind of gassed all the time, like out of breath. So went to do kind of after a big training block, we would usually have like a down week, and like that down week usually is a testing week as well. So we had a 2K.
Oh, you didn't do a 2K.
We had a 2K on Friday, and I was like, God, I really don't feel well at all. So I did my prep creases on like maybe the Tuesday or Wednesday that week, and had to stop in the middle of them. I was like, no, I like these splits are shocking. Like I don't even want to see the score at the end of this. So I was there. I'll go to the team doctor now, and I'll get a little sick note, you know, to get me out of the 2K. So at the time, David McGowan was my coach, and he used to go home to see his family kind of in those quieter weeks, because obviously we were just kind of doing little prep pieces. So he was away. He was in Sweden visiting his family, and so I was kind of just left to my own devices, and went to the team doctor, who was actually on holiday. So I saw another doctor, and he was like, no, you're fine, all good, off with you. I was just like, oh God, you know, I totally in my head been like, it's fine, I'll just get a little note, you know. But so I was like, okay, you've 24 hours to psych yourself up for this 2K. And yeah, I just kind of had to tell myself, you're fine, you know, get that out of your head, you're absolutely fine. And I remember hearing years before that a novice in my university club saying that she took like Airways chewing gum before a 2K to really open her lungs. So I went to the shop and I bought a packet of chewing gum and just started chewing on them before the air test. And I was like, yeah, I actually feel like I can really feel the breath going down my lungs now. Yeah, I think like kind of one strength of mine is like, I knew I wasn't going to PB, obviously. So I was like, look, you're not looking here to smash the time. You're just going to have to row 2 kilometers. So I kind of started off kind of conservative, and I was sitting on kind of maybe 144, 145, like, which would be like 7 minutes, let's say. And yeah, I just finished it. And like with 700 meters to go, I was like, okay, just crank it up, do whatever you can. And like, I think my time was actually quite respectful. I think it was kind of maybe 6:49, 6:50. And at the time that wasn't, I think I was only 3 seconds off my PB. And
crazy.
And I was just like, wow, this training camp has really hit me. I'm just yeah. So I was like, you know, I was like, I'm quite happy with that, given how I feel. And continued on, started the next block, got a head cold, got a cough, was just really kind of unwell. And then the feeling of unwell like escalated severely, of like, I have a stabbing pain all down my side. I was out rowing one day and I couldn't take more than 2 strokes. Like I had to do pauses for like 8K, because I was like, I can't take a stroke continuously.
Oh, wow.
Like my coaches were obviously being very patient, going to the doctor, and there was just nothing. Like I had no, like usually you get quite a pain in the back of your leg, let's say if you had it in the back of your leg, or a swelling. I didn't have any of that. I didn't have any of the normal symptoms. And yeah, I don't really know how it happened. I was in and out of A&E kind of 3 or 4 times. I collapsed one evening up in my house, and
joking.
My boyfriend had to carry me down the stairs and brought me into the hospital. And got put on a drip, sent home the next morning. Like they were like, "Oh, you must have a kidney infection," because I had pain in my side.
Yeah.
And this is not a kidney infection, you know. So they were giving me antibiotics and painkillers, and I was obviously feeling better, you know, because of that, because obviously the medication was working in some way. But I remember getting called to a meeting with Antonio to discuss whether we would go to Europeans or not, and walking up the stairs to go to his office. And instead of going into the office, I just had to go straight to the toilet to catch my breath because I couldn't like breathe at all. So I knew I wasn't well, but I was just so focused. I was so determined after kind of, like I was saying, like hitting that winter so hard. But I think it took about 2 weeks to actually finally diagnose. And it was only when I went for a scan, there's, you know, all these scans, and someone mentioned, "Oh, you've a bit of fluid in your lungs." And
Wow.
yeah, that fluid actually was like blood clots that had traveled and had been sitting for 10 days. So yeah, that was me out. No Europeans, no World Cups, no nothing. And yeah, I eventually seat raced myself back into the four, which was predominantly an under 23 four that had medalled that summer, I think, with like a week before the World Championships. So yeah, I was cutting it very close.
So I can't believe you actually got back in a four after that. I mean, were you on blood thinners or
Yeah,
medication
yeah.
like that?
Yeah, so I was on blood thinners for a couple of months after it, and I think by the time they kind of diagnosed me, they were like, "God, your episode is over. Like, what the problem is now is that the blood clots have been sitting in your lungs for so long that it's infected." Like, so it was kind of, yeah. I mean, it was difficult. They all went off to race a World Cup, like within that week, and then they went on to race the under 23 World Championships. Like, it was hard, but I was so kind of severely sick that, like, you know, I knew, and there was no way that I was going to be able to race. But yeah, it
Did
was.
they leave it up to you to say, right, you can race if you want to, or did they say it's okay for you to race, or were you just bloody minded after that?
Um, I think, like, obviously that was a difficult time of, like, within the kind of medical and coaching team. I felt like I was being pulled in a couple of directions. Like, some people were in favor of me taking like the rest of the season off. Some people were like, "No, she's able." You know, I think because it was qualification year, I think they were kind of keen to kind of put out what they could. And you know, obviously I wasn't going to be as fit as I could have been, but I think my experience, and I suppose just because I was just that bit older than the girls, I think that they were keen to get me back in a boat in some capacity. But like, to be honest, like I did have to seat race. You know, if I didn't make it, if I didn't win the seat race, I wouldn't have been in the boat. So
Yeah.
they delayed the seat race kind of as close as they could to the event to give me every opportunity just to kind of get some bit of training into myself. So yeah.
You sound like a crazy lady.
Yeah, to be honest, that kind of all happened. You know, when you're just kind of, okay, the World Championships are in 4 weeks, this, that, and the other, and you're just very focused. It was only really, I think, when I came home for lockdown the following spring that I was like, that was crazy. Like, you know, what I did. And yeah, it was crazy. And I think I didn't appreciate how lucky I was in general to kind of come out of that, to be able to row at all, because that was my first question, like sitting in a hospital bed, like crying. And I was like to the nurse, like, "Do I have to retire?" And she was like, "Oh no, you need to like take a break, but you know." So yeah, once that question was answered, I was kind of like, okay, whatever.
What did your mum and dad say?
Oh God, my poor mom and dad. So like, for some reason, every time I get seriously ill, they're always away. So I think they were, and I was obviously training in Cork, so they were in Galway, and they. When I went into hospital that night after I collapsed, I was kind of waiting until a reasonable hour just to message my mother to be like, "Morning," and she was like, "Oh," and I was like, "Well, I'm in A&E," and she was like, "Oh my God," like straight into the car on the way down. But by the time I got out, but by the time they got to Cork, I was already discharged, sent home with antibiotics. And yeah, I think we went for lunch somewhere, but my mum was like, "God, you really know Afric's sick when she hasn't touched her food." And I was like, "Yeah." But yeah, so I think they were just kind of concerned. But eventually when I actually got the proper kind of diagnosis and care, I went back to Galway then for a while, just to kind of be minded, but and kind of just to kind of get out of Cork, I suppose. Like it was, Cork's very rowing central, and everyone was kind of getting ready for whether it was international races or just our own national championship. So I kind of escaped that for a week or two, just to kind of to recover properly.
And it was fascinating how you said you needed the time at home in Galway to recover properly, that you hadn't recovered properly at the national centre.
I think it's just like you go down, you might have like, so my physio at the time, Sinead Murphy, like she really took me under her wing, and I was in every day. And while I didn't need physio, but she was just guiding me through simple exercises just to kind of get my heart rate back elevated. And you're going down to the rowing center with your little sheet of paper that says you can sit on a bike for 10 minutes, or you can go on a reformer, like a Pilates machine, and everyone else is knocking out like 4 10-minute pieces on the erg, or like 28K on the water, and you just like, I just don't think it's mentally probably the right place for you to be. Just it is difficult to kind of watch that all go on while you're just allowed down for an hour a day or whatever it is. So yeah, I think I also went up to they sent me up to Dublin on my holidays, what they said at the time. That's where kind of Sport Ireland has a big hub for all their sports. So I went up there for a week and kind of hung out with the swimmers and the athletics gang as well. So that was kind of nice as well.
Oh, wow. It's really interesting. Want to talk Olympics a bit. Want to start at the sort of afterwards, because I was kind of struck when I went to Skibbereen recently that compared with the homecoming that Gary and Paul had in 2016, because of COVID in 2021, there wasn't much going on.
Yeah.
But I kind of saw that you had some kind of bus parade. I mean, was there much of a celebration for you when you came back from Tokyo?
Yeah, so it was huge in Galway. Like it was amazing. Fiona is also from Galway as well. So when we landed in Dublin off the plane, my brother lives in Dublin, so my family came up to the airport to meet me, and we all went back to my brother's house for dinner and stayed in Dublin for the night. And Fiona had gone straight to Galway, and I was watching like the evening news in my brother's house, and I could see Fiona on the news with this big bus going through kind of the area of Galway where she's from. And I was like, oh my God, like mortification, like I'd never be able to do that. And I could just see all the eyes like shifting amongst like my sister and my parents. And my brother was like, oh yeah, well, you're getting that tomorrow. And I was like, no, I'm not. Like, no way. So they were kind of like, no, you are. You need to prepare yourself. So we drove back to Galway. And as I was kind of driving up to my house, I could just see all these people like pulling in and parking, and there was like flags and bunting absolutely everywhere. Like, honestly, it was so nice for like, I'd say about 6-7 kilometers all the way to my house. Just everyone had, if it wasn't Irish flags, it was just any color flag that they could get, Galway flags. And just, I think the local shop had given them away for free, and everyone just had as much as they could, posters, everything. So I was just like, oh my God, there was bonfires everywhere. And so yeah, a local kind of a bus company, they're a tourist company, Lally's. They gave their big double-decker red bus out to Fiona the day before, and then me. So yeah, my family and I got on the top of the double-decker and kind of drove through like the 3 local villages where I live. And at one point I looked down and I just saw Fiona standing there. Like, what are you doing? So I made them stop the bus and pulled her up to the rooftop with me. And she was kind of like, I meant to be meeting my friends in the pub. And I was like, no, you're staying. So we passed Fiona's auntie's house, her cousin's house, and they were like waving up at her, being like, what are you doing back on the bus? Like, but yeah, it was amazing. Like, to be honest, like, rowing is kind of obviously a minority sport in Ireland, and there's obviously plenty of GAA or Gaelic our sport here, and not that many people out where I live kind of would even know about rowing. I certainly didn't until I kind of started in secondary school. So I just think it's amazing for all those young kids to know that like rowing exists in Galway, and like it's another option for them. Yeah.
Wow. So on the race, one of the things that I thought that's really interesting was, and I don't think I should have been surprised at this, but I kind of was, that you said you went out to try and win that Olympic final.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I guess having raced the Australians quite well in the heat, well, I think you qualified directly for the final, if I remember. Maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, but talk us through that.
Well, I think like obviously, especially like that Olympics, there was a lot of unknowns. The Australians hadn't raced at all. I think in 2019 it was a different four, and so before the heat, no one knew how fast they were.
Mm.
And I think I mean we obviously expected them to be fast, but we knew the Dutch would be fast. We knew GB would be fast, and when we got Australia in the heat, we were really like delighted because we were like we kind of get a free hit of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, we went out. We very much kind of raced our own race. We knew they were there, but we stuck to our plan, and we really came back on them in the last kind of 500 meters. And I think we were 0.24, I think something like that, off them. And we were like, okay, they're probably tipped as kind of favorite, if not kind of silver at this stage. So we knew we had beaten GB before Europeans. Now, obviously, that was a couple of months like before that at this stage. But I think we just kind of had an element of no fear. And, it was obviously amazing to be in a final, but we certainly didn't want to just kind of be happy to be there and kind of let the bigger nations maybe kind of psych us out into thinking like, oh, the
Yeah.
Irish will settle for fourth, fifth, So I think, we very much were just kind of process focused, and it wasn't necessarily kind of always thinking about the medal, but it was just like, okay, what can we do to go out there and do the best performance that we can, which should hopefully ultimately get us up there near the top. And that was kind of more so our focus than I suppose going out there to win the actual race.
Yeah. So as the race unfolded, I guess did the Dutch and Australians go out, and you were kind of there or thereabouts at the K?
Well, I don't know. We were quite far back.
Were you? How far?
Yeah. So yeah, the Dutch and Australians, you're right. They went out. GB were pretty much third, I think, for most of it, but China were still ahead of us.
Oh,
as
were
well.
they?
Yeah. So yeah.
So you're giving the calls, aren't you, about where you are? I seem to heard from Amy. So what did you tell them? Did you tell them the truth about where you were?
Yes. So I looked over and I saw. We knew we couldn't even see Australia and the Netherlands. They were gone. GB were on our left, which was great because we could kind of, if we couldn't see them, you can almost hear them. And then knew they were ahead of us, obviously. And I looked over and I was like, oh crap, like China are also ahead of us. And like we had obviously raced China in Lucerne to qualify. So we kind of felt like, oh, well, we can beat them. But yeah, I kind of looked over and I was like, okay, no, they're ahead of us. So told the girls, just shouted up, I think fifth or something. So they would have known, yeah, okay, we're coming fifth. But I mean, at this stage, there wasn't a sense of panic. It was like, okay, we know the middle K, we're quite strong. We'll start to move through people. So I'd say maybe another 300 or 400 meters in, looked over and I was like, we're still fifth. So kind of like had to kind of say it with a bit more conviction of like, okay, come on, like let's wake up. So I think at this point, our bows were probably kind of interchanging between us and China, but I just kind of said like, I'm going to have to say fifth because if I say fourth, they'll think, oh yeah, we're moving. So yeah, not sure if it was an actual lie, but I just kind of said, I'm going to go with fifth. And yeah, so I think even between me kind of giving them that heads up and Emer, like she kind of read, okay, we need to go earlier. So Emer was kind of calling our strategy and she kind of brought it forward maybe about 250 meters earlier than we usually would. And she just kind of started to call our wind quite early. And once we got through China, I made sure just to tell them like, okay, yeah, it's working. Like we're fourth now. And yeah, you kind of had 750 meters left at the stage to just, it was kind of now or never, so it was like, yeah, it was great. You could really feel the response kind of from everyone. And, when you kind of get that energy as you pass a crew, like we could really feel that as we were going through GB. And then obviously, yeah, it was great that we none of the Tokyo crab business came into our race or leaving lanes or anything like that. So yeah, we were delighted to kind of get down the course in one piece.
Did you ever have a sense before you crossed the line about, oh yes, we're going to medal, or was it just purely let's wait until we cross the line?
Yeah, I think kind of once we were like clear of GB, I was like, okay, yeah, we're okay now. We're going to medal. And I remember kind of Emer calling the last 20 or so strokes. And to be honest, I didn't really know where the other two were. I could kind of hear a bit of noise. And I was like, I don't think we're going to get through them, but sure, we'll go as hard as we can. And I remember taking a stroke and kind of struggling to take it out cleanly. And I was like, whoa, I nearly lost my blade there. And I was kind of like, yeah. So that was a bit of, okay, no, just do the blade in, blade out, just get across the line. Like, don't be looking for any extra magic here. So yeah, I kind of took a bit of a risky stroke and I was like, right, no, that's it. Just keep it as safe as possible for the next 10 or 20 strokes, whatever was left at that time. So yeah, that stroke was a bit scary, but then I kind of knew once we were through them, I was like, barring an absolute catastrophe, I think we're okay.
Yeah. And so that result for Irish rowing was obviously incredible to get the first women's medal. What does it feel like to be part of the Irish rowing team at the moment?
Yeah, like it's great, to be honest. And I think I definitely can speak for like having been there for a very long time.
Yeah.
And it didn't always feel like this, and I think it's just we've had a lot of success obviously in previous Olympiads. Like our lightweights would have brought a lot of success before, like even before Paul and Gary, there was a lot of great lightweight fours and so on. But I think it was really special to kind of be part of kind of, okay, the heavyweights are kind of finally pulling their weight and bringing a bit of success too. And it's great to have just like be able to start putting out fours every single regatta. And even when we got to race our 8, I think it's really special to be part of it. And I think it's, as a junior, when I was looking up to the international team, like I was kind of like, absolutely no way. There's 2 or 3 absolutely rapid girls there. I'm so far away from them. It just felt kind of very, very undoable. Whereas now I hope that it seems a lot more manageable, and like there's so many of us there that that there's plenty of space for all the juniors and under 23s coming up. And I just hope that a lot of people kind of see that as something that they aspire to do, and that it's definitely possible for them to do as well.
A couple of things. I think I was talking to Emily and she said, oh yeah, Aifric, she's like the mother of the crew. What does she mean by that?
Probably because I actually was her mother when we lived together. Like her real mother, Mary, used to ring and be like, please be tidy for Aifric. Please don't behave the way you are at home. But yeah, I think I suppose having been there a bit longer than them, and when Emily and I first started rowing together, she was in like first year of university. I think she was just 18, 19. And I didn't really appreciate at the time, how young she was. And, when we made that 8 final in the pair, I think it was only kind of when we won our medal last year, I was like, wait, what age are you now? Like, you're still so young, they've achieved so much at such a young age. It's amazing, like, that they didn't have to kind of suffer it out like me for a couple of years before the team got successful. But yeah, I don't know, am I as much, I hope I'm not the bossy mother that maybe should be referring. Just more wisdom, I hope, really, than giving out.
Yeah, that was the sense I got. So what lies ahead for the next couple of years? Bearing in mind you've always had, for the apart from that Olympic year, you've had something else going on in your life. What are the next 2 years looking like?
Yeah, well, because I've just kind of finished my study year, I've kind of taken the last few weeks just downtime to finally go on holiday, which was amazing.
Where did you go?
So I kind of went all over. I flew to Morocco on Monday.
Oh, wow.
After the World Championships, and then from Morocco I flew to Italy and was getting all the tips from Giuseppe of where the best foods were. I went to Naples, where he's from, And then I went out to the Amalfi Coast for a day or two, and then I actually flew to Paris.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, and then came home. Then abruptly ended, and took me a few days to kind of pick myself up again. But yeah, so I had kind of 2.5 weeks of kind of just relaxing initially, and then kind of going off and doing a lot of touristy things. But yeah, so I think, at the moment, I'm just slowly starting to get back into training, and I would love to have kind of some work part time. So I'm kind of in the process of figuring that out. Obviously with rowing, it has to be very flexible and very remote as well, because we're obviously
Yeah.
can be away a lot of the time. But yeah, so just kind of started the season, taking things very slowly at the moment.
Actually, I just made the connection there. Did you go to Paris because that's where the Olympics were, or because Paris is a romantic city, or
Oh,
both?
yeah, both maybe, yeah. But it was very cool to see. They have a lot of like Olympic stuff up already, and when we went to the Eiffel Tower, it was kind of had signs up everywhere being like it's being refurbished for the Olympic Games and all that. So I think the Olympics is very much kind of already in Paris, and they're starting to get ready for it.
And what's your level of excitement about that journey as you sit here now?
Yeah, I think, obviously after the World Championships, it was a bit kind of deflated a bit, and I think, you know, I almost think it will be the making of the team. And I think when we didn't qualify in Linz, that was what kept us going for that
Mm.
kind of 2 years to qualify and then to ultimately, win our medal in Tokyo. And I think it's going to be a hard lesson for us as a group. We're going to have to kind of get our act together. And I think, it will hopefully be a good thing, that hopefully it will kind of get the hunger going and the motivation going again.
Yeah, that was the way I looked at it, particularly on looking at your career and stuff you've done. That
Mm.
it wasn't a necessary result, but it's as you. I'm sure your coaches will be thinking, oh, that's quite good. We've got that there, and they've got that there as a motivation in terms of
Mm.
particularly going into Olympic qualification year, where is it you have to finish top 7 to qualify, or is it top 6? What is
So
it this year?
I think it's top eight.
Oh, it's
Uh,
top 8.
or yeah, or is it seven? Maybe I'm not sure. I know it has reduced again because they have taken. It's definitely going to be less than Lynn's anyway, but I'm not actually sure of the exact number. So
Yeah,
it's going to be tighter. Yeah, I think it's seven. I think you have to win the B final.
yeah,
Uh,
I think so too.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but you want to do better than that
yeah.
anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that event, I mean, it looks like a really, really strong event. Still, I don't know quite, where the British are going to go with their four, but I can't see any of them heading out before Paris. And it'd be interesting to see what the Australians do, whether they come back with the same four or whether, is it Annabelle, was it Jess Morrison or Annabelle McIntyre? Who was the one that was out of it? Whether
I think Annabelle was in it. So
yeah, Jess, whether she comes back
yeah.
in or,
Mm.
and yeah, it's going to be absolutely fascinating. Um, well, is there anything we haven't talked about we should mention?
No, I think that's about everything. Anyway, I think.
Yeah, that's been great. It's been amazing just to spend, well, it's over an hour now, nearly an hour and 10 minutes. I don't know
Mm.
where the time's gone actually. In your company, you're extremely articulate, unsurprisingly, and a very accomplished woman. I guess maybe just finally, because you have a love of sport, and I did hear, I think you did, was it for TCD? You did a little fireside chat thing where you were asked about the next 5 years or something like that, and you did hope that you might come back and be involved with your various skills in a sporting context in some way.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something I think I love to do. Like up until a couple of years ago, I kind of thought, you know, a job in sport was really unattainable, especially in Ireland, that you'd have to move abroad to kind of
Mm.
get involved in, I think, the sports like, American football, soccer, athletics, swimming, the big sports. But I think, the longer I spend, I suppose, involved in Sport Ireland and the setup, and even seeing girls like Claire Lamb, one of our ex lightweights, Emer's sister, who's working in Australia now in the Institute of Sport, like that there is a lot of jobs out there, and I definitely think it's something that I'd love to do at some point in the future. Yeah.
Well, anybody would be lucky to have you, Aifric.
Thanks, Martin.
I think that's brilliant. Thank you so much for chatting to me on Crossy's Corner. It's been absolutely great, and I've really, really relished the last hour and 10 minutes. So thanks for being with us, everybody, and we'll end the live part of this interview now. See you.
Bye. Thank you.